Dennis, we're waiting on you.
It's muted.
You're muted.
Yeah. Don't panic. I've waited all morning. Are we ready?
Yes, you
Yes.
can go ahead and start.
Um, do we have a quorum?
You do.
We
Yes.
do, huh?
You have a quorum.
Oh, Claudia's here. Okay.
I'm
All
here.
right. We'll start with real property. I'll call it real property services to order. And I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the prior meeting.
So moved, Dennis.
Motion made by Claude, second. Supervisor Smith, thank you. Any discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. So there's three of us? That's it?
Yep.
Oh, boy. Okay. So we'll go to the business. Lex, you want to give us a rundown of?
Sure. Attached in your packet is a resolution request to appropriate funds. But before we do that, if you can look at the other items that are attached to that resolution request. At last month's committee meeting, I was requested to go out to ATL and get a cost for some asbestos and lead testing on the Mosher's Garage property in the town of Johnsburg. So that is the information that is attached to the resolution request. On the last page is the fee schedule. That fee schedule comes to $5,709.50. However, in the section that is labeled laboratory analysis, the first thing is the lead-based paint chip sample. They didn't give us a quantity. They did give us a unit fee of $10.50 if required. I know there is an office in that space in that building. So I would assume that they would need to do some type of paint sampling. So in my resolution request is to actually transfer $6,000 instead of $5,709.50, hoping that that extra money would cover the cost if any of those paint samples are needed.
Okay. Anybody got any questions? Being none. Somebody want to move this?
What are we moving? This number one? Sorry.
Yeah. Yes, Claudia, the Atlanta testing.
Yeah.
Chairman Dickinson?
Yes, Brad.
Yeah, my question is this for a particular job or is this just a general contract?
It's for a particular job. It's for the garage in Johnsburg. It's actually in Johnsburg.
I just didn't see it there. That's what I thought. I just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so somebody want to move this?
Yes, I will. I did.
Okay. Claudia, second. Sylvia, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Okay, next on the agenda is to get the committee approval from myself to be able to execute the authorization with Atlantic Testing.
Okay,
Chairman,
yes, Claudia?
I can move it. And I wanted to know if Lexi double checked with Kevin Hages about this, right? He didn't want to do it, right?
No, we were okay with it because it's just for this lead and
Right.
asbestos, and he was fine with that. I
Okay.
also double checked with Amanda. This doesn't need a resolution. It just needs committee approval for me to be able to sign off on this.
Oh, okay. I'm good.
You're good? Sylvia?
Yeah.
You good? Okay. You're good, Lex.
Okay. And then the next item is I would like to request the county attorney's office to be able to start the process of reinstating the temporary incidents of ownership on the Mosher's property located at 3485 State Route 8, Johnsburg. I had spoke briefly with you, Attorney Terwilliger, on this, and I know that Ray in your office had checked with the courts and said that it was just a matter of asking them to reinstate it. I'm not really sure of the whole process, but we have to have that before we can go on the property to do any type of testing.
Right,
Okay.
that case is actually closed, so we would have to recommence a tax foreclosure proceeding to get this temporary incidence of ownership going. Again, it's the environmental conservation law allows it where you can take these ownership incidents while you have a tax foreclosure case pending, which it's not, that property is not in our tax foreclosure proceeding for this year, the 2021 tax foreclosure proceeding.
Why is it not in there?
Wouldn't have been in most likely because of the fear of the pollution in it. The county, if the county took title to it, the county could be held liable for any kind of environmental cleanup or pollution problems for contaminated properties. I've noticed before a lot of contaminated properties aren't always included in our regular tax foreclosure proceedings because of that.
If I may,
Go ahead.
I don't remember that being the case in all the properties in the past, that they were in the foreclosure, because the reason we don't put them in the foreclosure is because of contamination. So therefore, we need to do the testing and in the inspections prior to us deciding whether we want to move forward with the foreclosure. I know when we originally, way back in 2012, the Mullins property at that time was not in the foreclosure, and we did not get anything from the Mullins until after that, them signing off. And we did testing back then. We did a phase 1, and then we did a limited phase 2 after that. And I believe both of those were done before we had any sign off from Mullins. And we had, I thought, a temporary incidence of ownership for those that property at that time.
Okay.
And if I may, I'm
Sure,
sorry.
go ahead. No,
Also, we've already done all kinds of work on this Johnsburg property, and we had a temporary incidence of ownership then, and it was not in any of our foreclosures back then.
okay. As far as I'm aware, you have to do it as part of a tax foreclosure proceeding. That's one of the requirements under the environmental conservation law for it. But another option is if the landowner would consent to it and do that, that's another nice, easy way to go.
The landowner on this particular property is deceased.
Chairman,
Yes, Claude.
I don't think we need, it doesn't look like, do we need a resolution out of this, Lexi?
For the temporary incidence of ownership, no,
Yeah.
we do not need a
Just need
resolution. We
something.
just need somebody to start the
Okay.
process.
Well, I think if we just ask Mr. Terwilliger to start that process, whatever it may be, including commencing a new foreclosure proceeding if that's necessary. Just get the ball rolling. Are you
Okay,
okay with that?
all right. What kind of time frame are we looking at?
Are you talking on my end or on?
Not sure.
Mr. Terwilliger.
Okay, timeframe to commence the proceeding. Oh, gosh, and then the thing takes a bit. It's going to take some time to get the court order from the court for this and commence the proceeding. Time limit. I do believe we would need a resolution to be able to commence this proceeding separately. It's not part of our existing foreclosure, and we'd be commencing litigation against this property.
Chairman? can-
Yes,
Um,
save me.
maybe this is an appropriate matter for outside counsel to help us get through this in a more speedy way, so we can get you there.
Okay. So what are you proposing?
I'll make a motion, we go to outside counsel to move it forward.
Lex, before we get a second to that, do you have some input here? You're,
Kind of a question first. Is there any way we can check back in the folder that would be in the county attorney's office from when we did these original testings to see what the process was that we used to get the temporary incidence of ownership then?
That's a good point. I mean, we've been on the property, we've dug holes and removed soil and
And remove tanks. Yep.
removed tanks. I mean, do we do those illegally?
Well, we had a temporary incidence of ownership.
Was the temporary ownership proper?
And that is not my to say. That comes
No,
from
it
the
isn't.
county attorney's office.
Yeah.
Supervisor
Right.
Thomas has a question.
Did we ever give up the temporary incident of ownership? I mean, we may still have it.
It expires after the report. That a report is supposed to be submitted to the court of that environmental testing, and then the incidents of ownership expire after that. Every indication we have is that this case has been closed by the court. So it's not an open case that I can turn around and make a motion and reapply for these incidents of ownership or anything like that.
Does your office have the paperwork that you would have submitted to close the case?
We don't have a lot on this. I have only an indication that the case is closed as per the court.
The only way
what
that it
I
can
have.
be closed, is the county attorney's office has to submit proper documentation to the courts to close that. So that's why I was just asking. I'm sorry.
That's fine. And the court issued an order closing the case. So that is all that I have.
Okay.
Brad?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, boy, this is really totally confusing. And I know, but what really bothers me is the fact that there's multiple properties up there that were owned by the deceased. And from what I understand, that they were divided up among the family, and they walked away from this one that is, because somehow it became polluted during the years that from the previous owners or from the owners before. I don't really know. And it's very hard that we have to come in and go through all this process and spend taxpayers' money on something where they just walked away with it because they've drained all the money out of the land and then left it for us to pick it up. But that's very bothersome to me, and it's hard for me to go to my taxpayers and say, hey, look, we're going to have to pay 32% of this, even though we do have a fund in here for the environmental cleanup. But, it's just bothering to me. And then we have to have this huge discussion of how we can go in there and further test. Why can't we just get the previous owners to pay for it?
She's
Well, that's a legal issue and it's a complicated one, Brad. We've done this in the past. If we get through this and get an environmental clean sheet, then we can sell the property and get money back. Claudia?
Well, I know what Supervisor McGowan is saying, and it is frustrating, but I agree with you, Dennis. It is a complicated issue. And while I'm sure Robert could get up to speed on all of it, this is kind of one of the reasons why we asked to have, through personnel, a contract to allow outside counsel to help on, specific projects like this. So I'm renewing my motion to go out for outside counsel to figure this out and
perfect.
help us get the property cleaned up. We need to get this wrapped up and not let it drag out any longer. Thank you.
Do we have a second to that?
I'll second it.
Sylvia? Great. All in favor? Aye. Motion's carried.
That's all I have for real property, Dennis.
Excellent. You can go to lunch.
I'm going to turn over environmental concerns to you. I do have an appointment that I got to get to. So thank you.
Okay. Just leave me hanging.
You're not
Don't worry
got
about it.
ladies here in the room.
Okay. Environmental. Excuse me?
You've got two supervisors here with you, Dennis. You're not alone.
No, that's right. Environmental concerns. Call the meeting to order. We need a motion to approve the minutes for past meeting.
No, you don't need to do it again. You already did it.
The first one counts for both meetings?
Yeah.
I never understand that. New business, none. And we want to talk about the septic inspection at transfer law. Claudia, I have some questions for you, unless you want to make an opening statement.
Sure, I'll make an opening statement. Thanks, Dennis.
Oh, boy.
You offered it up. No, I won't drag on. Like Supervisor Hogan said the other day, it's, I've been persistent on this. Everyone knows what the proposal is, I think. And I'll say that Warren County has been a leader in the past, definitely with respect to protection of Lake George, the water quality. We all know how important it is to our economy. And now we have received and accepted the funds from the state with respect to septic replacements along Lake George. And we do know that the Lake George Park Commission, the state commission, may develop regulations in the future on septic. But if you look at the TU letter to the editor that was published a few days ago, the Park Commission is going to go through a full scientific review of what kind of regulations need to be put into place. So that's going to take some amount of time. And I certainly support doing that, a lake-wide program. While at the same time, I think it's important for us to move forward too. It's the same idea with the boat inspection program and with the plastic bag situation. Both of those things, Warren County pushed forward, and eventually the state got behind us and went forward with a more robust program. So I think that it's an appropriate time to move this forward to a public hearing and let us hear from the public whether or not they want to impose something like this. And I know that there has been some talk of including all water bodies in the county. However, I think this is a good first step and that we should move forward with this rather than doing all of the water bodies at this time. So that's my opening statement. Dennis, thank you. I look forward to all your questions.
No, you don't. I do have some questions, and then I'll give you my experience. So you've been to the Warren County Fire Prevention and Building Code Enforcement Department and talked to Charlie into taking on this project?
I have submitted to, may I, Chairman?
Yes, please.
I have talked to Charlie and I have shown him the draft, and he has also looked at the fact sheet that I put together. And he, said if we move forward, we will certainly do this, just as he is helping with the short-term rental program in Lake George, for instance.
Is he putting on any more personnel, or is he going to do it in-house?
He is looking to do this in-house. And, one thing that is still outstanding is whether or not we are going to charge a fee.
Okay. I don't see how he can do it in-house. He's got more than he can do already. With this COVID thing, people are going crazy with the building permits. The price of lumber has skyrocketed, and everybody and his brother's been stuck at home, and they're doing porches and additions, and I don't see how Charlie can handle this. Under these guidelines that you point out here, just as a point of fact, 1 to 10 towns, town of Lake George, we have 470 some properties that would fall under this guise. 470. I don't know how Charlie is going to be able to do it. I have some issues with, you talk about a remediation plan. And it says the remediation plan should be done by the landowner. They're not qualified to do a remediation plan. The landowner. Most landowners don't know what they have for a septic system, let alone come up with a remediation plan.
Dennis, they need to work with their consultants to come up with the remediation plan, whether that's the qualified inspector and or an engineer. And the proposal also calls for the ability for Warren County to use an engineer if needed to review whatever the remediation plan is being proposed by the landowner.
Okay. My point is that you should take the OR out and take the record owner out. There's no way a record owner is capable of doing a septic design. The only way they'd be capable is if they were an engineer, but if they were an engineer, they'd fall under your requirements that you get a professional engineer. So I would take that right out.
All right, where it says the remediation plan shall be prepared by the record owner of real property, you want to delete that? Okay.
Take out record owner of the real property, and just put in the owner's designee.
Yeah, okay.
Then you're a consultant. And And I have a real problem with the county hiring an engineer to review these. The issue is this, and I've done this all my life, almost 50 years as an engineer. I have never, ever submitted an engineering plan of any size or scope to a municipality who has it reviewed by an engineer and gotten an approval letter back, ever. They go through all these gyrations. They'll send you back a 3-page letter asking for this, that, and the other thing. All that takes time, and all that time is money. So I like George is going to opt out of this, Claudia. We're not going to get involved in this for a lot of reasons, but we're going to opt out so we don't have to do this. But I'm telling you, this is an expensive thing, and you're going to hear from the landowners about it. Okay.
Yes, I understand that, but I didn't want to leave it, in a place where Warren County wouldn't have the ability to get its own expert if it needed to. If there was some sort of question that Charles has and he can't answer it himself, it says Warren County codes may engage an engineer.
Charles Wallace is a great guy. He's doing a great job for us at the county. He is not qualified to look at these sewage systems. He is not qualified.
That's why I'm asking for the ability for him to have someone look at it on his behalf, on our behalf.
He's not qualified to look at any of them. So you're talking about hiring an outside engineer to look at all of them. What's Charlie Wallace know about septic systems? Nothing.
Well, if I may, Chairman,
Yes.
what I am hearing from the experience in Queensbury is that approximately 80% of the systems that they are having checked are failing. However, many of those can be fixed without an engineered remediation plan. They are simple fixes that do not require an engineer to come up with a plan or to be approved by an engineer. So I think there are instances where Charles will be able to look at the remediation plan and give an approval or not without having to engage any other
I
engineer.
want to go on record saying that I disagree with that, and I think you're putting Mr. Wallace in a terrible position to ask him to do something like that. The other thing I want to point out, based on my experience in Lake George, we've had a ADVID program to replace septic systems. We've only gotten 12 applications, and 11 of the 12 have required variances. From 75A, they have required variances, and they go to the town's health board. In this case, because the town has a village, we have a consolidated board of health. It's not the town board. It's a consolidated board of health made up of the mayor and myself and 2 other people. So every one of these applications has had to go to the consolidated board of health. Now, I don't know how you're going to do that at the county.
Well, Dennis,
I will handle that.
the proposal is for people to fix their systems. It's not necessarily for them to go out and do replacements. I understand that a replacement could be more significant. This is to be able to use their existing systems, but make sure they're working and not failed.
In order to replace the system, you have to get a permit to do that. Somebody has to review it. So let's say the septic tank is 20 feet from the lake. And you're going to require them to put in a new septic tank. You're going to make them put it in 20 feet from the lake. You're going to let them put it someplace else.
Well, Dennis, if that is the case, they're going to have to go through all the regular approvals anyway. If they need a new system, they have to go through all the regular approvals and go to the Board of Health when that's necessary.
I don't see it. Claudia, I don't see it. I think this is, you don't mind, poorly laid out. And I think you're going to get yourself and the county in a lot of trouble trying to do this. Lastly, the administrative review is by the environmental concerns. Are you serious? How can this committee review a alternate sewer system?
Dennis, this is administrative review of variances, and if we need to have expert advice, we can do that. However, I'm sure that there have been many, I do zoning law, this is all regularly done by volunteer boards, and we are actually an elected board that gets paid to do this kind of work. I think that this is an important thing. And for you to say that this is poorly drafted, I will have you know, this is drafted right off of Supervisor Conover's proposal in Bolton and as well, the town of Queensbury's proposal. So I don't think that we should be throwing stones at someone else's programs that are already working well and that we can expand to the rest of the county. And I am making a motion that we move this forward to a public hearing. So we can hear from the public if they really hate it. At your suggestion, I also included, like you referred to, the opt-out provision. If a town really hates it, they can opt out.
I have one more question for you. You've kind of answered this, but I was surprised you didn't have Glen Lake on that.
Glen Lake is covered by Queensbury's current
Is where it's at?
section at transfer law, is my understanding.
Yes.
Okay. You're right. Brad?
Yeah, thank you. Dennis, you really, I respect everything you said. It is true. And also listen to Claudia. It is, you being in the field is the engineer, me sitting on a planning board, but understanding. But your applications that come into your area, do they go to your board of, your town board as your health department?
No, it goes to the consolidated board. It's the mayor and I. So it goes to the consolidated board. They all go to the consolidated board.
So like, if anything that the county would see in when you're, when someone in your town is selling their house and the county sees it, needs an inspection, you guys would be amending the project or the repairs, correct?
Well, that's my next issue with this whole thing, Brad. This should be a program that's done through the towns.
Well, but I'm saying, but unfortunately,
The county, Brad, listen to me. The county's not set up to do this.
no, and I understand that. See, because we have our own building department here, in Queens. And so, we do it all in-house, but the billing and codes is shared by, the smaller towns and oversees that. But how are the septics done now? Don't they go through every interval? I mean, I see Supervisor Leggett on. I mean, does it come to your board up there for your?
You asking me or you asking Craig?
Well, I'm asking you if I can ask Craig.
Welcome aboard, Craig. Go ahead. Did you hear the question?
I heard most of it. I was scrolling through the inspection form there. If you want to repeat that so I can be clear.
Well, I guess, I see Dennis's point and I see what Claudia has really put so much time in, or Supervisor Bramer, sorry, has put so much time into doing it. And we're so close here and protecting our waterways, especially Lake George right now. And like, but are your inspections done to the county or do you have your own billing department?
Well, inspections are the responsibility of the owner of the property. And we do not go out and inspect. They hire an engineer to go take a look at it. And I can get into detail problems with that. And so we're not equipped to do the inspections in this town.
All right, that's for the septics. But like in your building department, do you have a building and codes in that, or do you go through the county?
So the county takes care of all of the building inspections.
All right, so whenever you have a septic job that comes up and then, on say a new build, who's your health department?
Town
Okay,
board.
let me take that into a couple points. The registered engineer that has stamped the septic design is responsible for inspecting it during construction, signing off on it, and that goes on file in our zoning office. then. So it's all upon the owner and their engineer.
You make
So,
them do an
look,
as-built.
every
to-
town-
Yes, they do an as-built.
Good, great, perfect.
So it seems like every town has their little unique there. And I think what Supervisor Bramer's done here is really helped out everyone. And if you can have some wording in there that allows the towns to continue doing the way they do their inspections or how they file, but as long as it's a mandatory law across the whole county, that this will happen, on the main bodies of water and eventually all bodies of water, I feel. I'd hate to, stop the momentum of this because I understand where you're coming from, Dennis, and since you've already have something established, is working together and seeing what we can get the wording just correctly so everybody would be happy.
Brad, the point I was making, and you've reinforced it, is that you're instilling a law that is going to suck the towns into doing the work. The towns are the ones that are going to get the phone calls. The towns are let me give you an example. So a guy calls up, wants to know if his property's in one of these zones. He's near one of these bodies of water, but he doesn't know if it's in or out. Do we have a map? Do we have an overall map telling who's in and who's out?
Dennis?
Claudia?
Okay, thanks. In this instance, this is not to take away the jurisdiction of any of the towns. And it isn't meant to add any additional work on the towns. All of that work is going to go through Warren County Buildings and Codes. The county is already buildings and codes for all of the towns except for Queensberry, who has its own. So yes, you may get some phone calls. You're a town supervisor. I don't know how that works because I'm not a town supervisor. But you can certainly refer people to Warren County Buildings and Codes. And we have worked with county planning to help with the identification of properties, and we can certainly make that more clear and more available. That's why I put together, and I took this from Bolton, they were kind enough to share it with me, the information booklet, so that hopefully we can put this form on the website and you can refer people there. They can look at it. They can help understand what all of the requirements are in a common sense way. I think, again, I think it's important. I think we should put it forward for a public hearing. We did that this morning with whether or not we should put e-bikes on the Warren County bike paths. So I certainly think this can go to the public. There has been a lot of work put into it. This isn't something willy-nilly that I'm asking you to put forward to a public hearing.
Well, I'll reiterate what I said before. The Warren County Building and Zoning is not qualified to look at septic systems. They don't do septic systems. They do buildings. You got a building, you need some help, they'll tell you. But you can't go to them with a septic system because they're not qualified. They're totally unqualified. And you didn't put anybody else on to help them out. I mean, they're going to be buried with applications. And go back to my point that I just made, Craig, if you could wait a minute. Do you have an official map of who's in and who's out?
I'll have to ask Sarah. I think she does.
Because that would be a key issue here. First off, people have to know if they're in or out. The other thing is, as soon as they look at this, they're going to have questions and they're going to call the towns. Then again, if they're going to redo their septic systems, they have to go through each and every town. I'm not letting Warren County review a septic system in my town. I'm sorry.
And we're not trying to take away that jurisdiction at all. That's not what this is about.
Well, according to your law, it is. It didn't say anything about going to the towns. You're going to the county. Craig?
Thank you. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of things to consider. This is a well-intended local law, and I would like to see that Chester gets pulled out as one that's exempted because we have a problem enforcing it. We're a small town. We do not have anybody on staff to enforce it. And the way ours is written right now, professional engineers need to come out and with some details that are included in the local law make it difficult for those professional engineers to certify an inspection and report back. And also trying to get a hold of a professional engineer to do this in a timely manner is difficult with the workload they tend to be under. This provides for septic inspectors. And Dennis, I think that's who would be doing it. There's going to be a cadre of approved septic inspectors that can go out there and do it. Also, I was trying to see where Appendix A with the list of water bodies, what that refers to, but septic inspection should, in our town, is within 200 feet of any, or 250 feet of any water body over so many acres. And I didn't see Friends Lake on this list, and I had brought that up before. We have Loon Lake, but not Friends Lake.
Yeah, I wrote that down.
And I asked if your town board would make a resolution. I don't know where that stands, so I didn't change it.
Well, sorry, I missed that one. Then how did Loon Lake, Schroon River, and Hudson River get on there? Because those are our two borders and one included lake.
These go all the way back to when we were looking at the criteria that DEC would use for giving us grant money.
Okay.
I don't, what do you mean?
So like 2 years ago, we were trying to get DEC to give us the septic replacement funding for all of these water bodies. And county planning helped us narrow it down to the ones that we originally qualified, we thought, under the DEC guidelines, which were, I think it was a certain size, acres, as well as public access. It had to have a public access.
Gotcha.
There was also a criteria about whether or not the water quality has been impaired at all, and we had to put that in a table. Sarah Frankenfeld did all of that work for us, and it was a lot of hard work at putting together all of the data, and these are the water bodies that came out of that list. I didn't change anything because I never heard a consensus about adding any particular water bodies. Now we know DEC at this point is only giving us the replacement funds for Lake George, so I think we can go beyond that, but I don't know that we need to necessarily until we get this thing up off the ground, which is why, again, I'd like us to take it to a public hearing. Okay,
that explains some. So the Appendix A was just for the DEC program. It's not the included list of water bodies that this local law would apply to.
Well, I think Friends Lake is out because there's no public access.
It's still a water body though.
No, I'm not arguing with you, Craig, but according to Claudia, she said it had to have public access according to the DEC.
For that septic, for the grant, for receiving
For the grant.
money.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love to have Warren County take on the duties of inspecting things, because it gets touchy here. A lot of it needs to happen before the fact, and real estate agents aren't always keen on having this be part of their process. So when you have a transfer, you have a buyer and a seller. The buyer wants to get rid of the property as quickly and without any added expense to themselves. So they are not inclined to do a septic inspection. The real estate agent is paid commission from the seller, so they're not inclined to push for an inspection. And a buyer comes in totally unaware that such an inspection is required. They buy the property. We get notice of it from Real Property Tax Services that a lakefront property has been purchased, and now it's too late. So there's that complication at transference, how this comes through on the town level, because other towns do not have this. If it's all county-wide, then it becomes a greater body of knowledge, and a real estate agent in Glens Falls, Saratoga, Clifton Park would be more aware, oh, you're in Warren County, you're going to need an inspection. And then Dennis, if I may follow up on your concern about variances. So our town board, acting as a local board of health, and Sylvia and Supervisor Smith and Brant Lake, I know you go through these as well, that most of these are older lakefront properties. If you have a system that's failing, you're going to be on a substandard sized lot, and it's going to be you're going to be within 100 foot of a well, you're going to be within 200 feet of the shoreline, you're going to be within 25 feet of your neighbor, you're going to need an engineered system more than likely. And those applications then come before the local board of health. So I would imagine that an inspector upon transference or before it gets transferred would deem a septic system not acceptable, substandard, and then professional engineers would have to get involved to design an acceptable septic system. And chances are pretty good that would come in front of the town board acting as a local board of health for approval. So it is a complicated process altogether. It's a costly process for sure, and takes a long time, all for a good cause. But there's a lot of pieces that need to fit in to make sure that this is customer friendly and easy to be administered by the county and the town together.
I agree with you, Craig. I think there should be more town interface with the county on this proposal and some feedback from each of the towns.
So,
We're definitely opting out. The town of Lake George spent in excess of $50,000 developing background material on our area of concern along the lake so that we can make reasonable scientific determinations of what people will be allowed to do to put in a septic system. We have a map that has an overlay. It has elevations on it, vegetation, soil cover, bedrock, distance to groundwater, wetlands. Every single one of these 457 lots that we're looking at has all that data right at our fingertip. And then we use that data, so when they come in with a septic system, it gives us the ability, as I said before, it gives us the ability as a consolidated board of health to look at it in a reasonable manner. Every one of these septic systems that we've done has required at least one variance. Some of them 3 and 4 variances.
oh yeah.
So you need all this information so you can make a reasonable decision about what people are going to do. Claudia?
Dennis, that is wonderful what Lake George has done. Not all of the towns have been able to go out and get $50,000 worth of data. That should not stop us though from asking people to inspect their systems, those that are near water bodies, so that they can be sure that sewage is not leaking into the water bodies. And
Yeah, but
right now, let me just finish. Lake George, you guys are doing a great job. And that is not happening everywhere where people are transferring their properties, especially right now because of the pandemic. People are buying up properties left and right, and they are not checking these septic inspection, the septics. And we may be getting people from a city who don't even know what a septic is. This is something we should be raising their attention, and like Supervisor Leggett said, getting more of the real estate people to know about this and making sure that they go through this process prior to the transfer happening. I think it's really important, and I think that the realtors understand that as this gets passed through the county, it makes it a little bit easier on their life because they know it's more consistent. It's not one thing here and one thing there. Although I understand Lake George will opt out, I respect that. And that's why that is included in here. Although I would say we'll amend to take out Chester from being exempt so that you will be covered, if that's what Supervisor Leggett wants.
And then, yeah, I think it's easier to include everybody and then have opt-outs rather than in local law. If somebody wanted to come in, then you'd have to amend the whole local law again and go through that whole process.
Well, I think this is a problem for the towns, and I think the whole thing is, it's going to come right back in our lap in the Consolidated Board of Health. Every one of them. As Craig pointed out, a lot of the waterfront, most of the waterfront properties, if not all of it, are on pre-existing non-conforming lots. And you're really, really going to slow down the sale of these properties tremendously. It's going to be a big deal. Does anybody have anything else?
Yeah.
Sylvia?
I would rather talk. I know we put a hold on this before, but I would rather put it on hold again. I'd like to go back to my zoning administrator. I'd like to talk with that department in my own town before I make any decision, because I have a few questions for them. And I know that we do a lot of the same that, they do in the town of Chester, but I know we have our own engineer that we bring in. When we do variances, we have the people's engineer, our own engineer, APA, our local board of health. There's a lot of steps that are taken to protect any place that needs to improve their septic system. So anyway, at this point, I'd like to just put this on hold. I know that's not what you were looking for, Claudia. I'm sorry, but with just the three of us here, I just would rather go back to my town and have an in-depth discussion with Jim and, before I can even make a decision.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I know,
Yes.
would it be okay if I made a comment?
Yes. Is this Rachel?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Chairwoman, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to highlight that as we've been talking about this for several months, and even longer than that, I'm aware, but it's important, of course, to hear how Lake George feels about it and how Horicon feels about it and how Chester feels about it. But as we're all very much aware, we've got multiple municipalities in a city. And while it may not directly affect some, it's certainly the reach is there to every single one of our municipalities and impacts our communities. So while it's great to have this discussed in committee, much like the bike path or some other things that we're seeing go to full board and the request for that opportunity to hear from the public and to be able to engage in that dialogue, maybe there is a way to also look at what I learned today, Dennis, was that maybe Supervisor Dickinson, what I learned today is that maybe we should also be talking about our building and codes department and really taking a heavy look at that aspect. And are we prepared as not only our tourism world explodes, but, obviously the real estate market and what our EDC director has been sharing with us about people moving up here and building. So I do think that as we start to look at people moving here, this is going to be a conversation that's really important. And it would just be nice to see this move to a full body as well to continue that dialogue. And I wish we would consider that today. And if it needs to go back to committee after the full board for further review, then we do that. We keep working on it until we come up with a compromise that's good for all of us. And I would just appreciate that consideration as the three of you make your votes or four of you make your votes here today on this resolution.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Brad?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for listening, even though I'm not on the committee. It's an important issue for the whole county. As we go through this whole thing, can't we just make a simple law that in the county, period, that all houses, within a certain feet need to have a septic inspection before sale? I mean, just a simple one that it makes it required so it doesn't happen at the end, like Supervisor Leggett said that you find out afterwards. But if you put the law out there that no property can be sold, within 250 feet of certain bodies of water, and unless you have an inspection, and then every town can just handle how they do it right now as we work through the fine point. Isn't that what we're trying to achieve here?
Brad, Claudia's put together a pretty straightforward proposal. I'm just concerned, my major concern is that it's going to fall back on the towns, and I think we need to give the towns a chance to really look at this before we move on it. I don't want to have them come back later and say, geez, I didn't have a chance.
No, I agree with you.
Okay, Claudia?
I've talked enough.
Sylvia?
Yeah, I was going to say, we have had a chance to go back to our towns, and I have. However, we have a change in our zoning administrator. The one that came back to us was there many years and has more experience, and I haven't had a chance to talk in depth with him. So I didn't want you to think that I hadn't been, researching this along the way.
Not at all, Sylvia.
All right, thanks.
That's not what I meant. So I'm going to assume that this is tabled until the next meeting. Okay?
I made a motion. Can't we
No.
take, I guess it doesn't matter. I mean, can we have a vote on it? Do we need a second? Isn't that the thing about our committees?
You need a second, you didn't get it. Well, I can tell you, I'm going to vote, Claudia, if you haven't figured it out yet.
I know that, Dennis, which is why I would like it to go to the full board, because it,
No, that's not how it works,
not just
Claudia.
you, but others, no one is going to take this seriously until we send it to the full board. And if there are actual
Everybody's
problems, I
taking
am
it
more than
serious.
willing to work on it. And no one has brought me anything. I put together this information packet because there were concerns about, well, do we have information out to the public? There have been discussions at local levels, and nothing has come back to me to say, well, this doesn't really work. Can you change this? Nothing. It's not going to be taken seriously until it goes up to the full board. That is why I have been asking for several months since January of this committee to go to the full board. If it's terrible and everyone on the board hates it, then we'll send it back to the committee then. But for us to just keep spinning our wheels here is very frustrating, as you can see.
Appreciate that, Claudia, and I know you put a lot of effort into it. It's not going to the board. It has to come out of this committee, and it's not coming out today. Craig?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We all know it's really tough to discuss something at a board meeting. Can we have a board workshop over this to get any questions worked out? Because like I say, Chester already has the ordinance, and we'd love to have the county take it over for us. So.
Well, that's a different proposal, Craig, than what they're offering you.
It's better written than our local law for.
You have it and you're using it, and you have a good local law. That's the way it should be. You should be able to go out and get a professional engineer, have them design whatever you need to do to solve your problem, bring it to the town, have them approve it with the condition that, one, they certify it as complying to all rules and regulations, and two, that they do an as-built, so when they're down the road, you know where the system is and what it is. You've got it covered. You're all set. You're good to go. And you got your Board of Health. If they come back and say, look, we can't do this without this variance, you have the ability to look at it and decide whether or not that's what you want to do. What we do in Lake George, just take this one step farther, is we require every system that's in the critical area to be a tertiary system. And there are a lot of them out there. It can't be the old septic tank tile field. We require a tertiary treatment. And it's got to be a dozen of them out there, and they're all good and qualified. So you get the first system we put in is double tertiary treatment. So that's your opportunity. You're set to go. I don't know if you want the county to do it for you. I don't think it's going to work out the way you think it is.
I'd
So
love
maybe
for them to do the enforcement.
well, that's an option. Craig, we'll put that on the table. Did you have something else, Sylvia?
That's a great system you were talking about.
Yeah.
We just had one in Queensbury on Glen Lake, and it was just totally amazing. And they say you practically can drink the gray water when it comes out, right?
Well, they're all like that. My preference, if we're going to talk about a system, my preference is the pure flow. They're the moss in the box.
Oh, right.
They pump from the septic tank down to the pure flows, and that's it. There's nothing else involved. There's no homeowner involved. There's no checking the filters. There's no anything. Some of these other ones are little chemistry sets. You set it up in your yard, pay $15,000. Somebody's got to run it. It's got all kinds of moving parts, and but no, there's a lot of things out there.
UV lights. Yeah. No, you're right.
Yep. Okay.
Chairman
we-
Dixon,
Yes.
would it be possible then in the spirit of having more discussion and having more supervisors be able to not only weigh in on this, but ask questions and concerns I'd like to put it on the workshop agenda. I think Supervisor Leggett's suggestion is a good one. I think it was his. This summer, we have a workshop coming up, and maybe we could do a presentation and talk a little bit more about it then. We don't take any action in our full board workshop. It's information only.
Sounds great.
Mr. Chairman,
Great. Yeah. Yes.
I might be about to ask a really dumb question, and I'm sorry, I missed most of this conversation, and this is not the issue that has been foremost in my mind in terms of keeping up on what we're doing with it. But I was under the impression that the direction we were going to go with this is we were going to, and maybe that's the direction we are going. So if this is dumb, just discount whatever I'm about to say. We were looking at a model whereby someone couldn't sell their property unless they go out and obtain a private inspection and a private certification that their septic system is okay, so that it takes the burden off of government. Is that no longer what we're looking at here?
Ryan is truthfully, yes. But the problem is that most of these systems, you're not going to get that letter. A lot of these systems, you're unable to even tell what they have for a septic system.
It's true.
And then if you do figure out what they have, they're going to require some kind of improvements, and you're going to find that they have requirements for variances. Now you're back at the town level again. Did I answer your question?
You did.
That's exactly what we want to do, is have an inspection done by a third party, and then they would have to fix the system if it's failed in any way. Chairman, what you are saying is that it's too hard to deal with this now, so let's not do it. We're just kicking the can down the road for people 20 years from now to fix their systems, maybe. And in the meantime, the failed systems are going to continue causing problems for water quality. I do not understand. I genuinely do not understand your objection to this. And yes, I understand that it may put some more burden on the town boards of health, but otherwise we really are just kicking the can down the road. And I don't accept that as a solution. If there's another way to get to where we're trying to go.
Okay,
please.
Claudia, I'm going to give this to you one more time. Here's my objection. The county's not qualified to do this program. They are not. They're going to be going out for an engineer every 5 minutes. 2, no matter what you do with this ordinance, we the supervisors in the towns are going to end up with it in our lap. And 3, as Craig said, and I'll reiterate, a lot of these systems are going to require variances. They're definitely coming back, and they're definitely issues. There's a lot of discussion going on when you need a variance between the engineers and everybody involved. So no, it's not as simple as you make it out to be. You're not going to get people to call up an engineer and have them come down on Wednesday and look at your system and write you a letter. That's not happening in the majority of cases, if not all of them. It is not happening. And I've done septic inspections for 40 years, 44 years. Do we have anything else on the agenda? Anybody have anything else they want to talk about? Do we have anything from the
Adjourn, Chairman.
peanut gallery? What about Don
No,
Lee? Well, he's gone. Okay, got a motion to adjourn.
No public comment.
Okay, great. Thank you, Don. Didn't mean to wake you up. Okay, meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.